Hello, and thank you for taking the time to attend today's presentation. We wished to be able to see all of you face-to-face, but certainly appreciate this opportunity to provide the important content we're going to talk about today virtually. My name is Josh Dirkse. I'm Director of Client Services for the Wisconsin County Mutual Insurance Corporation. The County Mutual insures 52 of the 72 counties in the state for liability, workers' compensation, and property insurance. Seeing the need to assist our members in the growing exposure area of cybercrime, the County Mutual Board of Directors implemented our Cyber Enhancement Endorsement back in 2014. The Cyber Enhancement Endorsement provides $1 million in coverage at no additional cost. Along with offering coverage, we've focused our risk management services in the area of cybercrime and cybersecurity through the development of recommendations geared towards strengthening our insured's awareness and training programs. As we continue to evolve in this area, we look forward to partnering with Wisconsin counties to help in addressing risks and continually seeking opportunities to lower your total cost of risk. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the emerging cyber threats. We're going to reveal some trending tactics of cyber criminals and what your county can do to avoid becoming a victim. We're also going to talk about the area of employee training. We'll demonstrate that your employees are your greatest exposure area to cybersecurity or cybercrime. So we're going to understand the importance of employee training and its role in your cybersecurity program. We'll identify specific areas and specific ways to train employees and raise awareness. And then finally, we're going to talk about cyber incident response plans. We're going to talk about some of the benefits of having a cyber incident response plan, what goes into a incident response plan, and really how you can implement that to affect your total cybersecurity program. So a little background here, and I'm sure as all of you are aware, especially if you are in your county's IT department or you have some background in IT, you understand that threats to counties and other governments are on the rise. The tradition for cyber criminals was to target private corporations with deep pockets. Well, the trend that we've seen in the last couple of years is to target public entities with critical systems that contain sensitive data. So why do they target you? When you're resource strapped. Budget dollars go towards serving the needs of constituents versus developing robust systems with the latest technology. You have open systems. So the county website contains many access points. It contains publicly accessible information, such as payment services, agendas and minutes, logins to other critical systems. And some of that information is not hidden behind password protection. You also have critical systems. So counties maintain systems that have critical services and contain sensitive data, and those systems are absolutely essential to serving the basic functions of your county. So these are some of the trends that we've been seeing. We've obviously target those private corporations with deep pockets, and now we've seen a move towards targeting public entities with these very critical systems that may not have the top of the line cybersecurity. So next we'll move into and talk about some of the tactics of cyber criminals. So we're going to talk about two today. One is called social engineering. It's actually a pretty wide-ranging term. The next one we'll talk about is called ransomware. So what is social engineering? Social engineering is a tactic used by criminals, cyber or otherwise. It doesn't necessarily mean social engineering is a tactic of criminals, whether they're using a computer or hiding behind technology, or if they're conducting a face-to-face attack. Social engineering exploits humans versus technology. So that's the important thing to note here, humans versus technology to perpetrate a crime. Criminals use social engineering to manipulate a victim into believing they are acting in their own or their organization's best interest. So social engineering is a pretty big term, so we're going to break it down a little bit here into some of the subcategories of tactics. And so one is called impersonation. Impersonation involves the perpetrator masking their identity as someone relatable to you. This may include your boss, staff in finance, human resources, or even the IT department. It can also be outside of your organization, so it can include a service provider or a contractor. And at the end of the day, what the cyber criminal is banking on is your aim to be a good employee. So providing a prompt response, immediate response to your boss, or providing those documents that your boss is looking for, or the access information, they're relying on your aim to be a good employee. Usually with impersonation attacks, there will be some form of urgency. So I need this information now. If you don't provide it quickly, they might email back and say, I need this information within the next 5 minutes. So again, you want to please your boss, you want to please your employer, and so you unwittingly release that information to a cyber criminal. So if we're thinking of an example of impersonation, so during an impersonation attack, you may receive an email from your boss. So let's say you work in the finance department. Your boss, the finance director, emails you. He wants you to rush payment of an invoice to a service provider. Hey, XYZ contractor is missing payment here. We need to get this payment promptly sent over. So your boss, John Doe, he uses the email jdoe@co.anywhere.wi.us. But the attacker may use an email with a subtle difference, like jdoe@co.anywhere.wi.uk. So at first brush, this email appears legitimate. You look at the email address, it looks legitimate. Basically, it's the same number of characters, looks mostly the same. And so in an effort to be a good employee, you rush that payment, only to find that that request was fraudulent. So we had a recent example from one of our school district insureds. The perpetrator had masked themselves as a business official, so the person that's in charge of handling all of the business that the school district conducts. And that business manager requested all W-2s for all employees from a payroll clerk. So administrative employee, not a manager, not someone high up the food chain, but that business manager was asking for those W-2s from the payroll clerk. And so the perpetrator was hard-handed in that request. They used a lot of caps. Need this information now. And when that initial request wasn't listened to, they responded with increased urgency. And so in an effort to deliver, that payroll clerk delivered all employee W-2s for the district to the perpetrator, exposing all of that information to cyber criminals who could obviously financially benefit from it, but also opened up a significant amount of information to more wide-ranging implications for each and every one of those employees. So again, impersonation attacks can be difficult to see some of the differences in what a cyber criminal is doing in terms of masking their identity. But at the end of the day, I think that it's really important to educate employees in slowing down. So next, let's talk about another tactic of social engineering. This one is called phishing, and this one's very prevalent. You might have all heard of phishing, and there's a high probability that at some point in your life through your online activity, you have been a victim of phishing. So phishing attacks use emails, instant messages, text messages that are sent en masse that appear to come from a legitimate company or organization only to spread malware or to obtain sensitive information. So again, using large phishing net, this social engineering tactic called phishing, again, we're broadcasting out, we're sending out that's meant to catch as many fish as possible. So it's sent en masse, it's not focused or customized to the victim. Phishing uses technology versus person-to-person contact. Phishing attempts that use malware are able to infiltrate contact lists of victim, and then that spreads the audience. So that's how a lot of these things spread. If they get in one place, they're able to mine all of that data for an individual's contact list, and then their attack and their audience attack can expand greatly. So phishing accounts for 77% of all social engineering related attacks. So again, that is it's significantly focused on phishing here when we're talking about social engineering. But again, there are some of those other sub-tactics. So if we're looking at an example for phishing, you might receive an email from a domain that looks like your utility company, stating that the company had difficulty processing payment of your organization's recent utility bill. The email will contain a link to re-enter your payment information. That link may land you on a legitimate-looking page containing the utility company's logo and contact information. It might even look like their website. It might mirror it very closely. Because you want to avoid that late payment, you enter your credit card information or your payment account information, and then that is sent to the cyber criminal. So when we're thinking again about phishing attacks, how do we focus on avoiding them? I think the biggest thing to remember is that do not, under any circumstances, transmit any financial or payment information electronically. Always either provide that information over the phone by speaking to someone at the contractor or the utility company or whoever's requesting that information, or seek to speak to multiple people within that organization to make sure that request is legitimate. And then always use cautious when clicking. And really, at the end of the day, just trust your gut. If something seems off, if something seems fishy, no pun intended, just use your gut. Just trust your gut. So next, let's talk about even if breaking down phishing even more, this tactic is called spear phishing. So again, then we're still talking about social engineering, but spear phishing is a targeted attack. So it differs from regular phishing in that it's not casting that wide net with hoping to catch a few. Spear phishing attacks are targeted against a victim using their personal information to obtain even further sensitive information. So spear phishing is far less prevalent than regular phishing because it involves a significant amount of research. So cyber criminals will look at your online footprint. They'll scan your social media. They'll see what you like, what groups you're involved in, what you post about online. They're basically mining your online footprint, and then they're able to basically customize an attack that suits you. So they might see that you are a particular fan. You like the local dog kennel, and you show your dogs there. And they might mask themselves as a statewide organization for dog kennels. So they're gonna focus that information. They're gonna target that information to your need, to your specific likes, dislikes. So spear phishing attacks may use a colleague's genuine email to perpetrate the attack or mask. So they may mask themselves. You may get an email from a legitimate looking email from one of your colleagues, and that's done by using technology, pretty high level of sophistication involved in it, but it may happen. That those attacks may come from someone relatable to you, and it may look like it's coming from the real person, but it's actually coming from the cyber criminal. So how do you pick that out? You got to read the email. I recently got an email from a colleague that expressed emergency. I need you to email me back. Don't call me. My phone's not working. I need you to email me back. And I think that was really an attempt to start a conversation. So if I email back, they put the bait, I bit, and then that would allow them to further continue that conversation. The next request would have probably been, I'm stuck somewhere. I need help. Can you wire money to me? Can you submit an online payment to me in some form so I can get out of XYZ mess that I'm in? But don't call me. Don't call me. That's a big red flag. So let's talk about ways to avoid being a victim of social engineering. I think the biggest one is slow down. We all want to work fast. We all want to be diligent employees and provide information quickly to please our bosses. But at the end of the day, social engineering perpetrators are counting on you to act first and think later. So time and time again, we see it. Just slow down. Think about things. If something seems off, trust your gut. Do some research. Again, if something is off, trust your gut, do your due diligence, research legitimacy of requests. There are a number of online tools to do so. You could look at the URL that's hiding behind a link. If that URL looks fishy, you just have to hover over. It's called a tooltip, and it'll show you where that link is headed. So use your gut, do your research, and check with companies to see, did you send this information? Did you send this request? Is there another way that I can provide this information to you? Do your research and just trust your gut. Have solid internal controls. This is a big one too. Examine your internal controls regularly. Use dual authorizations for the release of sensitive information, financial information, and payments. So that is essential to have if you work in accounting departments, if you work in payroll, and just make sure that you have dual authorizations before you release information, because that avoids that social engineering attack when you get that urgent request from your boss. We need this information quickly. Send it over now. Slow down. Use dual authorizations, so speak to another person. Within those internal controls, you should have a hierarchy of people that, for satisfying those requests, who you need to contact. So have those solid internal controls. Use those dual authorizations if you're going to release any of that sensitive information. Immediately delete any requests for financial information or passwords. Almost always, in every essence, these requests are illegitimate. A lot of companies that conduct online business or have online portals for you to manage payment information, they will never ask you to send any financial information over email. They will have you log into their sites. They will send you a link here and there, but they will never ask you for that information over email. So delete those requests immediately. Reach out to that company to make sure it was valid, and if it was, ask why they're asking you for that information over email, and log into their portal to do it where it's secure. Passwords. Never use the same password for every site requiring a login. I feel like password security has been talked about for the past 20 years, but I think a lot of counties have done a good job in having solid password policies. But a lot of times we'll see that some will have the same password for just about every system that they log into on a daily basis, and that is a dangerous act, because once that password is breached for one system, it now opens all the other systems up to potential breach. Don't click without discretion. So links embedded in email are very dangerous. Anyone who's emailing a link, again, I mentioned that you can hover over the link and that'll access a tooltip which will actually show you where that link is headed. So before you click, just think, is this link coming from a legitimate source? Was I expecting an arrival of this link to go to a specific website? You can also copy and paste that link into a Google search. There might be previous reports online of suspicious activity, or it might notify you that this is a dangerous link. So do not click without discretion. Always think before clicking. Set rigid spam or junk filters. So again, if you work in IT or you're in a position to consult with your IT departments, make sure that they have spam filters set to the highest setting to vet emails with great scrutiny. So I know that might cause issues from time to time, but a very rigid spam or junk filter is essential to keeping all of those attempts, all those phishing attempts that are sent out of your regular inbox and where they should be, which is quarantine. So have those rigid internal controls and have those rigid junk and spam filters. So next, we're going to talk about the second tactic we're focusing on in the emerging cyber criminal tactics, and that is ransomware. So ransomware has become increasingly more prevalent for public entities, and we're going to talk about some specific examples in a second, but we'll define ransomware first. Ransomware is a type of malicious software that infects a computer and either prevents it from working as it should or prevents access to certain files until the user pays the demanded ransom. So that's where ransomware gets its name. At the end of these attacks, there's always a request for a ransom. Ransomware's threat continues to grow. It is now considered the biggest threat in cybersecurity. These events are becoming more frequent, but they're also scary because they are very, very costly. And we'll see some of these financial demands in the form of ransomware in a little bit, but they have become far more lucrative for cyber criminals, and that's why it's growing in popularity. So estimates show that in 2019 there was an attack every 14 seconds, and by 2021 experts expect that there will be an attack every 11 seconds. So you can see here on the graph on the right here the increasing cost of ransomware. Back in 2016 it was a mere $325 million. That's a significant amount of money, but all the way now, data through 2019, all the way up to $11.5 billion. So you can see it's becoming a very lucrative form of cybercrime for cyber criminals, and it's growing in popularity. So how is ransomware spread? Ransomware is spread by visiting fake or infected websites or drive-by downloading. So you go to a website that's fake, you click on a link there, or you click a link to download a document that you're looking for, or music, or if you're pirating movies, which you shouldn't be, clicking that link to download that movie, and lo and behold, it installs malware. It might give you the file that you're looking for, but it will also have some ransomware embedded in that download file. So it can also be spread by phishing or spear phishing attempts, either by opening email attachments or by clicking again on suspicious links in email or on social media. It can spread via web servers. So it might have one entry point on that web server, and again, the prongs of that attack are pretty wide reaching, and they can extend very quickly over a network or a web server. They can spread from an individual machine to a network or server again with ease. So once it's installed somewhere on the network, it's going to install to all other machines connected to that network. Because again, it's not something the attack doesn't happen online or with online portals. It's going to specifically affect a specific machine or equipment or server. So how does ransomware work? So this is kind of a step-by-step process. We're going to run through it. Step one, the employee is going to download, click a malicious link or document that is going to contain that malware that's going to place ransomware onto the computer. So the ransomware is going to unleash the malicious code into the computer's processes without knowledge, so it's all in the background. You're not going to see a nice convenient screen pop up that says we're downloading your ransomware now. It's going to happen in the background and download all of the files that are going to be needed for the attack with ease. So once installed, ransomware will vary and differ with how quickly that computer is locked or the files are encrypted. But regardless, it's going to contain some code that's going to eventually launch the attack and lock up your computer. So once launched, ransomware's code will lock the computer or encrypt the files, and then we get the red screen of death. It's not always red, but in this case, this example that I found is red. So here we see this is the screen that's going to pop up. It's going to lock all of your files. It won't allow you to click that X button, click the exit button, or get off this screen in any way, shape, or form. It's going to notify you very, very kindly, actually, what happened to your computer. How can you recover your files? And I love that at the bottom left there's a contact us button. So it's very convenient, trying to help you out. They've even got in the upper right-hand corner a language selector. So, but this is a screen you don't want to see. This is the screen that's going to lock your computer and then going to demand a ransom to unlock it. It's going to provide you with a scary timer on the left-hand side. It's going to provide you with how to submit payment, where to submit payment, and how much. And so this is a very scary screen. If you're a county mutual insured, we recommend that you contact us the minute you see this screen. A rapid response in any ransomware situation is absolutely critical. A rapid response allows you to engage cyber incident response resources, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. It will identify computers that are affected or servers that are effective. It will allow you to identify if a backup is available. I'm not sure what schedule each specific county's backups are on, but if you have one that happened recently, you can react quickly and activate that backup. A rapid response will allow you to utilize expert IT consultants. Those IT consultants can help you arrange payment in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. If you're a county mutual insured, that will allow you to access some of our expert resources that we have as part of our cyber enhancement endorsement. And then finally, a rapid response will get you to recovery or decryption and restoration as quickly as possible. So as much downtime as we're able to avoid and get you back up and running, that's the end goal following a ransomware attack. So in our realm, this has been a widely debated topic in ransomware, and that's whether to pay or not to pay. There's two sides to this issue. So for those on the pay side, let's compare these to pay or not to pay. On the pay side, so those that are in favor of paying cyber criminals in a ransomware attack, they say that really at the end of the day, we don't have a backup available. So they're out of options. If their entire server's locked up, they don't have a backup available that they can activate and work around the ransomware. They also cite return on investment. So ROI in the sense of ransomware is done when you make the ransomware payment. And I have two examples here, two large municipalities, City of Atlanta and City of Baltimore. So City of Atlanta and City of Baltimore were victims of ransomware attacks. Both opted not to pay. In Atlanta's case, they opted not to pay. I believe their ransom was around the $6 million figure, but at the end of the day, they spent about $17 million to recover from that ransomware attack. City of Baltimore was in a very similar situation. I don't think that their ransomware demand was as much as the City of Atlanta's, but they eventually incurred $18.2 million and more. I think it's still ongoing to recover from that ransomware attack. So what's the ROI on the ransom demand if it's $300,000, if it's $10,000, $5,000? What's our ROI here? Is making that ransom payment and getting our data back quickly going to benefit us more, or are we just going to recover from it? Payment allows you to return to operations quickly. So if you need to get your systems back up and running quickly, argument to be made for making that payment, that ransomware payment, and in a similar vein, return access to data quickly. So those in the not pay camp, they believe that they need to take a principled stance against cyber criminals. Certainly. You want to avoid perpetrating victimhood in the future. You take a principled stand against it, and you don't make that ransomware payment. If you have adequate technology and computer backups, network backups, server backups, and you can deploy those pretty quickly, you don't need to pay. And those in the not pay category say, again, paying makes you an easy, repeatable target. If you paid once, you're likely to pay again. And so those cyber criminals might refocus their attacks on you sometime in the future. It might be a year, it might be 5 years, but you paid once, you're probably going to pay again. That will continue to be debated in the cybersecurity realm, whether to pay these ransomware attacks or not. But I think at the end of the day, there are a lot of factors at play on whether and what route you should take. If you have that backup available, again, the backup is critical. If you've got that backup available, deploy it, and you're able to resume operations pretty quickly. So, how do we prevent ransomware? Educate, train, test, and repeat. Educate, train, test, and repeat. And that includes, the tactic we talked about before was social engineering. Educate, train, test, and repeat. Having security safeguards are great, but you also need to address the human element. We're going to talk about that next. Perform regular backups of critical data and systems. So have those backups in place, have it on a consistent, regular schedule. Test those backups, isolate them. That's a really important point. Take those data backups off of your main network, put them on some external media, put them on a different server, because once that server or network is infected, it might render that backup useless. Ensure operating systems and software are routinely updated. I know updating your PC or your workstations and operating systems and software are a pain in the butt, but the people that provide those tools are always evolving. They're always implementing patches. They're always implementing ways to combat ransomware and other malware attacks. They put patches through in those updates, so it's important to keep those machines up to date to make sure that those patches for the latest and greatest ransomware and malware are in there. Restrict user access to download software without approval from IT. So that's an important one. It kind of removes the factor of drive-by downloading. If you've got a rule or policy in place to restrict user access to downloading without IT approval or without manager approval, that is essential. Always scan downloaded software using antivirus software prior to installing. That is a no-brainer. Using antivirus software for all downloaded materials will identify whether or not something is considered suspicious. Bolster your IT or computer use policy. That is a no-brainer. Obviously having that in place, it sets expectations. It lets the employee know what you expect of them and how they should conduct themselves when using your technology. And what we'll talk about in a little while is develop a cyber incident response plan for a quick response to ransomware or any other type of exposure or data breach. Next, we're going to talk about cybersecurity training for employees. We've mentioned a couple times in the presentation that employees can be your greatest exposure to cybercrime. So you've got all your ducks in a row. You check all the boxes in the IT department. You've got your firewalls, you've got your server segments, you've got email encryption, you have web and email filtering. But what about your employees? You've got all these physical safeguards, but what about the human element? So addressing the human element in cybersecurity is essential to ensuring all of your ducks are in a row. A recent Verizon study highlighted that 90% of cyber incidents use employees as the entry point. 90% use employees. So you can have the latest and greatest in physical safeguards or technological safeguards, but you need to address the human element. The human element. In a 2019 State of IT Security study that surveyed 15,000 IT professionals listed employee training, not digital safeguards or physical safeguards, as the top problem faced by IT professionals. In 2019, Proofpoint Security Technology surveyed customer employees and found 30%, so almost a third, didn't even know what phishing or malware were. So that is a huge gap in education there. It's absolutely essential that your employees understand what these terms are, what they are, what the tactics are, and how they can avoid becoming a victim. Your employees, at the end of the day, as I mentioned, are your most vulnerable entry point for a cyber criminal. How do we address the human element? One way is through policies. If you don't have one already, develop an email internet, social media, computer use policy. Have that policy in place because it sets expectations for county-provided media and personal devices used while connected to your networks. It addresses procedures for reporting a potential threat, any other ramifications that might result from a violation of that policy. Continuing to talk about addressing the human element, phishing tests. This is something that's pretty new within the last couple of years. So phishing tests regularly test employees using phishing testing tools. So essentially what happens is the employee is sent a phish test, so they receive an email that contains a link, and if they fall for that phishing attempt, the employee is then required to complete phishing training. So again, you're going to train employees to look out for things, and then if they fail, you're going to reinforce some of that knowledge base and what they can do to avoid becoming a victim in the future. So if the employee successfully deletes that message or marks it as spam, they receive kudos. So there's some positive reinforcement in there too. But phishing testing is a fantastic tool. Test your employees intermittently, not on a defined schedule. The emails are always very creative, and it can be, even for the trained eye, it can be very difficult to pick out some of the suspicious information that's included in them. But regardless, they are a fantastic tool. And I included some of the providers of phishing testing tools like InfoSec, GoFish, KnowBe4, and Lucy. Addressing the human element again, we're going to talk about now employee training. Train employees, new and old, regularly and consistently through various mediums. Use in-person training, online training, or even micro-learning opportunities from IT. Micro-learning, in essence, is posting stuff in employee break rooms, in common areas or hallways within your county. So micro-learning opportunities, again, just raise awareness, and they're a fantastic opportunity and a very easy one to deploy in that. Train employees in their language. You know, if your IT department's going to complete the cybersecurity training and awareness training, avoid IT jargon. You know, as much as you want to use it, you may understand it, but the admin assistant in the human resources department isn't necessarily going to understand your IT jargon. So train them in your language. Make the training engaging. So one thing that has really been beneficial, especially for some of the younger generations as they come through the workforce, is gamified training. So vendors do provide training programs that include some gamified options. So you can have leaderboards, badges, missions. You know, people in my generation who grew up playing video games are very keen on gamified training because it reminds us of, you know, earning those badges, placing high on the leaderboard, completing missions. So gamified training can lead to some engagement of employees and actually make the learning experience a little bit more easy. Use humor. Cybersecurity is a dry and scary place, but humor will certainly help learning. So it's important to train employees on tactics, first and foremost, so they understand and can define what malware, phishing, impersonation attacks are, and include emerging tactics. You know, these are always changing. There's always new terms coming out, and there's always new tactics coming out because cyber criminals need to be innovative. Train employees on the risk. So obviously, financial harm to their employer is important, obviously, because they're gainfully employed with that employer, and they don't want to see those hard-earned taxpayer dollars, budget dollars stolen. But there's also the opportunity for personal harm. You know, opening up and being reckless in what you're clicking on online at work or at home can have personal ramifications. So a social security number can be stolen, other personally identifiable information that can be stolen that can be used to personally harm the employee. Train them on password security. So again, that's the first line of protection. It's the basis for security when it comes to your critical systems, but it's really important to train employees on password security, not sharing passwords between employees. Don't put your password on a Post-it note that's posted to your computer or right in front of the computer so you always remember it. It's important that employee know password security. Train them on how to identify threats by covering some of those tactics, by making sure that they are aware. They should be able to, at the end of the day, identify a phishing attempt, or at least be keen on and know to question an attack, or to reach out to their boss or another employee and say, hey, is this legitimate? Should I click on this? Should I not? At least if they're aware that something looks off, they know that they can identify, or at least know that they should reach out to somebody to have a second look. Train them on your policies. Remind employees their conduct is governed by your IT, your computer use, or technology use policy. So make sure that they understand that. Train them on the process for reporting potential threats. What is the reporting procedure if they believe they've been a victim of a cybercrime, or they believe they've clicked on a link or downloaded a document that they shouldn't have. So train them on that process so that they know who to contact, and that allows you to rapidly get involved and make sure that other systems are not affected by any type of malware that may have been clicked on or downloaded. Addressing the human element, some of our resources, and speaking obviously just to County Mutual Insured, we have some online training courses that you can access through our coursework database. We have a course called Cyber Risks, Avoiding Social Engineering Tactics, which covers a lot of what we just talked about. We also have a course called Data Breaches and IT Security Response Plans. So those are available to you at no additional cost as County Mutual members. On top of that, we do have some other resources in the area of IT and cybersecurity self-assessment templates or scorecards. So please reach out to me if you have any interest in accessing either of those resources for you or your employees. And if you're a County Mutual member, I'd be happy to help you access those. So lastly, let's talk about cyber incident response plans. These are an essential tool within your cybersecurity plan or your IT plan, and they have a wide-ranging impact. It's not something that should sit in your IT director's desk. It provides guidance for an entire organization in the event of an incident. So again, it shouldn't sit in the IT director's desk and he pulls it out once or twice a year to look at it or activate it or reference it. It is guidance for an entire organization in the event of a cyber-related incident. It identifies responsible individuals and defines accountability, in essence, forming a response team. It promotes containment of any incident. So if you have a breach of personally identifiable information, if you have a malware attack on a workstation or a group of workstations, you can contain that by quickly activating that response plan. It promotes communication and awareness, and it's a continual process, as any policy or procedure is. It's a continual process and always evolving. And so as you have these, as you use the response plan, use that opportunity to conduct a post-containment analysis and figure out ways, if any, that cyber incident response plan can improve. So what are some of the benefits? It allows you to anticipate cybersecurity incidents before they occur. It allows you to minimize the impact of cybersecurity incidents. It allows you to mitigate threats and vulnerabilities while a cyber attack occurs. It helps you reduce the direct and indirect costs caused by cybersecurity incidents. It helps you maintain business continuity in the face of major threats, prevent the loss of data critical to your organization, and strengthen your reputation as a secure organization, thus increasing partner and constituent confidence. So one thing in a lot of these cyber incidents that a lot of people don't necessarily consider is your reputation. If you are seen, Target took a big hit when they had their data breach, Home Depot as well. If you have a cyber incident, the reputation, your reputation is going to take a hit, especially if you're in a small community, if you're a small county, you have a cyber incident, people are going to be apprehensive about using any of your online, payment portals or sending you any type of personally identifiable information. There's going to be some concern if they know that you've been a victim. And so your reputation is on the line as a secure organization. So what should a cyber incident response plan address? One, it should, again, identify that response team. So obviously you want to include your IT department. It should involve your corporation counsel. It should involve county administration, whether that be if you have a county executive, administrator, or admin coordinator. It should involve human resources from the personnel policy perspective. It should involve public relations if you work with any public relations firms or if you have immediate contact within your county. And obviously you should involve your insurance carrier, especially if you purchase cyber insurance. So involve your insurance carrier. You obviously want to, how should losses be reported? Is there any type of specific risk management services that can be involved in the cyber incident response plan? Involve your insurance carrier. We would certainly appreciate it. It should address identifying incidents. So what needs to be reported? Obviously, your employees feel like they might have been a victim, but does that incident need to be reported? And in most cases, the answer should be yes. So what should be reported? Suspicious emails or links, theft or loss of electronic devices. So if one of your human services employees loses, their laptop or their iPad that they take with them to home visits, theft or loss of electronic devices obviously exposes all the information that's contained on that device to theft. Virus, malware, infections, or ransomware. Suspicious network activity. So if you're noticing a severe slowdown on your network, or if you're noticing, an odd login from, someplace that's not located within your county, you obviously want to report that and activate the response plan. And finally, you all as Wisconsin counties use a lot of vendors. You work with a lot of vendors who might maintain a lot of very personally identifiable information. So obviously, in the event that a vendor sustains some type of cyber incident or suffers some type of breach or failure, does that activate the plan? It probably should. So, in relating specifically to cyber incident response plans, as county mutual members, we do have plan guidance, cyber incident response plan guidance that includes an overview of cyber incident response plans. It includes an implementation toolkit, scorecards, and self-assessment tools, and even a model policy or plan. So please reach out to me if you're interested in that resource. And on top of that, we do have expert breach coaches available. Those are mainly available post-loss. So again, it's not a proactive tool, but largely if you do suffer a loss, we do have breach coaches that can assist you with addressing a lot of the items that, laser focused on the IT aspects of it. But there are a lot of wide-ranging implications and business continuity considerations that an expert breach coach can assist with. So I want to thank you for, again, taking the time to listen to this presentation today. Again, I wish I was able to be in person and see all of you face to face and meet some new people. But again, happy to provide this information virtually. If you have any questions whatsoever, whether it be from a coverage perspective or any of the information that we presented here today, please feel free to contact me. My information is on the screen, and I'm sure that it will be included in any information that WCA sends out. So please reach out to me. Don't hesitate. I'd love to talk with you. So thank you again, and hope you have a great rest of your day.